Welcome to Duck Stash, the University of Oregon show on Dash Sports. I'm Izzy LaRue. Here with me is Michael Strite. Michael, let's get into everything Ducks football. So, Michael, there's been a lot of controversy between us. We talked a lot about this, but let's just say Shuck is the starter for the season, even though it's not official yet. Do you think he will finish the season as the starter?
Yeah, we come back to this question again, Izzy, and we're going to talk about it a lot, and we're going to talk about it after the first game as well. And it's going to be a frequent subject in these Duck stashes because it is the biggest question about Oregon football. They've comfortably had Justin Herbert just sitting there at quarterback every season for the last 3.5 years, and now Oregon fans not only do they got to get used to a new quarterback, but they expect a high level of performance from the quarterback position. Justin Herbert leaves a really impressive legacy. And Tyler Shuck is being sort of on that path as the apprentice, the replacement, studied under Herbert all of last year. And he's got a lot of good chemistry with the whole offense. The offense is used to the way he plays. They're used to catching passes from him. He's been that guy. He's been in an Oregon uniform for I think 2 years now, one as a red shirt and then one as like the official Herbert backup. And so that's why it's not going to be a surprise to anyone if he is the day one starter, but it is a big question mark about how that evolves over the course of the season. And that has a lot to do with Oregon's performance as a team. I think if they really struggle offensively, if they don't win, if they lose a game, then obviously they're going to try and salvage the season by putting someone else in at the QB position. With we both expect to be Anthony Brown at this point, we see that as sort of a two-person quarterback race. We'd be surprised if somebody else is in that mix. Do you agree with that, Izzy?
Yeah, I know, definitely. It's just yeah, from the looks of it right now, it looks like he's gonna be the starter. But my whole thing is about this. We both been on talking about Anthony Brown forever, and my latest column for Sports Pac-12. Everyone in the comments, you guys got in your feelings about me saying that Brown should be the starter because everyone was talking about, oh, he's getting the first team reps, he's getting first team reps in practice, in scrimmages, this and that. But if you guys listen to that, also listen to Cristobal talking about those scrimmages and practices, saying that neither quarterback has really shown who could be QB1 come when the season starts. There's really no separation, and all Shuck has right now over Brown is just being at the university for a longer period of time and having chemistry with the offense and the receivers rather than Brown, who just came in this summer. And let's say that he does start the season. They play Stanford the first game of the season, and then they go. They have Cal too. I don't know what he's going to do in those first two games because, like Michael said, Oregon's going to come out very rusty in their first few games, especially with the new O line, basically a whole entire new secondary with only Lanier coming opting back into the season. It all depends what he does those first two games, and I think Brown's the guy. I can't go with Shuck if he does start the season. I don't see him ending the season as a starter.
Yeah, I love Izzy shouting out his columns. Go read his columns; they're good stuff. Always gotta touch on that, and it's totally fair. I mean, it's um, Mario Cristobal hasn't put his confidence in either quarterback explicitly. That's why we're talking about Tyler Shuck as unofficially the QB1, and that's why there is this controversy swirling around. It's funny how the media has applied the term quarterback controversy onto it. It's more like a quarterback competition, but either way, it's who's going to be the quarterback. It is a big question mark. Um, and Mario Cristobal and Joe Moorhead, I think they're keeping their options open. I mean, it's almost like somebody dating two people. It's like they don't want to fully commit to one and say, oh, this is our quarterback and this is clearly the quarterback or something. They want the option to throw Tyler Shuck out there for maybe even a half of a game and then say, nope, Anthony Brown. Like they want to be able to not catch a lot of flack for just putting both guys out there and seeing who makes some plays and who's ready week one. I think that's going to be the strategy. Izzy, I don't think they're going to announce a quarterback. I mean, what's the timeline for this? This has a lot. This is something we don't know about how Mario Cristobal operates, how Joe Moorhead operates. We know it's a strategy move to just not say who your quarterback is and just say we'll figure it out when the first play of the season happens. Or are we going to get like an official Mario Cristobal saying Tyler Shuck is our quarterback a few days before the first game? Which one do you expect to see?
Yeah, so there's 2 weeks until the season starts, and the clock is ticking. And to be honest, it really doesn't benefit Oregon for them hiding who the starting quarterback is going to be, because neither one of these guys have had any experience in the Pac-12. Brown, he's had experience in the ACC, but this is a Pac-12 schedule, so it doesn't really make sense for them to be like, oh, we're gonna hide who the starter is gonna be. I see them probably a week before next week, hopefully by our next show,
Yeah.
or the day of, probably the day after. Who knows what when media availabilities are gonna be like next week. But I see them announcing the starter next week, the week before the season starts. I think it would kind of be nerve wracking if they do it the week of or even the day before, because as you know, Michael, as everybody else knows, an offense likes consistency. They
Mm-hmm.
don't really like to be like, oh, who's going to be our guy? Like receivers, they don't want to be worrying about who's going to be throwing to them. So during practice, they want to stay after with the one guy over another, because if you stay with Brown more after practice and he's a starting QB, then you're going to get more passes in the game compared to if you're with Shuck after practice and he's not going to be the starter. Well, then you're out of luck with chemistry wise.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you that you on your point that it is no benefit to Oregon to keep it a mystery from the outside world, especially because we're going to figure out, as media members, who is taking those QB1 reps in practice. There's always going to be a conversation about who is practicing with the starters and how that's going. And I think that as soon as Oregon football coaches know who they want out there as their starter, they're going to announce it. But I'm not sure how long it's going to be before they feel confident. And I think part of that is like what Mario said. You got to take his words at face value that neither quarterback has made that jump to say, okay, this is this guy who wants to play, right? He's going to be QB1 right now. And he isn't getting that from either quarterback right now. And so the question is, if you're Mario Cristobal and you are a week from today, you're sitting there, you've got a week before the game, and you still aren't sure, would it benefit Oregon to just pick Tyler Shuck and just say, okay, it's been a whole camp right now. Tyler Shuck is going to at least start as our quarterback. Or if you keep delaying with the hopes that maybe you learn something over that last week of practice, and whether you keep that rotating door. I think it is better for Oregon just to pick somebody and probably Shuck a week before, like you said, and really get it out there and get that confidence going and get the consistency of just Tyler Shuck being the guy for that last week of practice. But I'm not sure if that's how it's going to play out. I think Mario and Joe Moorhead, in terms of what I think will happen, are going to be, just a little paralyzed by not knowing who should be the quarterback. Because when you're in Oregon's position and you have to go 6-0, really, to impress to. I guess like that's the expectation is to go 6-0. There is so much pressure on just not starting slow. You have to be a top 10 team in the nation from the get go. And that means that they need to make sure the right quarterback is on the field.
Michael, I have a question for you. Because we know in college football, when teams they don't really have their number one guy, they like to mix in quarterbacks. They'll be like, okay, you'll start one half, and then the other guy will start the other half, or they'll have different quarterbacks start different games. Do you think now that we're bringing a guy like Moorhead into our offense that may happen with these two quarterbacks, where we might feature a two quarterback offense where there's not going to be the guy, but there's going to be
Mm-hmm.
multiple guys to see how it goes.
There's a lot more examples of this in college. The noteworthy pro example is the New Orleans Saints with Taysom Hill. And I talked about this. I think Anthony Brown at least presents an option to be a Taysom Hill situation where he comes out on the field in certain packages and they can get creative with plays for Anthony Brown and Tyler Shuck both on the field. That's a question I would have to ask Joe Moorhead, whether he's the type of coach that considers that and thinks that's valuable, or if he's like, no, we don't do that. Because he certainly could be the kind of coach that just says, no, that's not in my offense. Um, Regardless, I think, we talked about the question here is Tyler Shuck going to be the starter at the end of the season? I say no. I say it's going to be Anthony Brown. And to go even more on that, I think game one of the season is going to be multiple quarterbacks throwing passes. I don't think Tyler Shuck will be the only quarterback to play significant time in the first game of the season. I think even in game one, we're going to see one, some kind of mix between the two.
Yeah, that's a very fair observation. Let's move on to our next topic. What happens if there's going to be multiple one-loss SEC and Big Ten teams? Now, Michael, we've seen it happen a lot before, where a Pac-12 team gets that fifth or sixth spot and just barely don't make the college football playoffs because a Georgia team or a Penn State team, along with Alabama or Ohio State, get that fourth spot because they were so competitive in league play. And we both know that the SEC and Big Ten are far more competitive conferences than the Pac-12 conference. So tell me, what do you think is going to happen if there's going to be multiple one-loss teams in the SEC and Big Ten?
Yeah, college football playoff. It's still happening. There's going to be four teams. And usually, I mean, last year we did have a sort of Big 12 champ, ACC champ, SEC champ, Big 10 champ. Like the four of them all just kind of made it in there. The Pac 12 champ, obviously, Oregon got left out as the number five team. It was very, structured like that. It was very easy to pinpoint. This year, and usually when the Pac 12 is left out, which has happened a lot, it is at the expense of two Big Ten teams or two SEC teams that join the party because those are the top two conferences right now. And the Big Ten finally getting their season started this Saturday. So you're dealing with a lot of hypotheticals, but we have to first assume that Oregon is 7-0, and we don't think that a 6-1 team is making the college football playoff from the Pac-12. And we don't think that there's too many other teams that can go 7-0 in the Pac-12. I mean, I want to respect the other teams in the conference, but Oregon is at least the most likely team to do this, which we've talked about this before. I even don't think is that likely. But let's say Oregon has the season, fantastic year, 7-0, and they're knocking on the door of the college football playoffs, and they're saying, hey, look at us. We're undefeated. Let us in. Then you get that question of, so many SEC schools are really doing well right now. The Big Ten could have some really, really strong teams. You could even have a Big Ten champ that isn't Ohio State, and then an Ohio State team that is still, 6-1. I don't remember how long their season is exactly. Maybe they're 8 games, but you could still have a Big Ten team like a Big Ten champ, and then an Ohio State with one loss that kind of sneak in, and they're both in there. There's so many other teams, I think, that are going to be competing with Oregon. It's going to be a real logjam, especially this year with less games to sort things out.
Yeah, definitely. I've said before, I think Oregon's gonna go 7-0 and make the college football playoffs. But looking at how the SEC has been going through this year, Georgia's looking very good this year. And even though they lost to Alabama, there's still the SEC championship where they could play Bama again and get that win over them. So now you have two teams in the SEC, Alabama and Georgia, with one losses against each other. And then the committee's looking at Oregon saying, oh, you guys went 7-0, but how many ranked teams did you play against? And it'll probably be just USC, maybe an Arizona State team, maybe a Utah team, they might be ranked, they'll be in the very bottom 20s compared to the SEC where Georgia and Alabama have been in the top like 10, top 5 throughout the whole entire season so far. So it's going to be very tough for Oregon to make it, even if they go 7-0, which is it's going to suck for Duck fans if that happens. Because Michael, imagine the backlash that's going to happen if Oregon goes 7-0 and does not make the college football playoffs, and we get another Rose Bowl game.
Yeah. Well, Izzy,
Because
I want to pose that question to you. I mean, last year you saw what happened to Oklahoma at the hands of LSU. And LSU was a historically great college football team, not just the best team, but really insane. Um, and I think from what I gather, most Duck fans are happy to be Rose Bowl champs rather than being basically the substitute for Oklahoma, where they just got rolled. I think Oregon fans would have felt a lot worse about the season, weirdly. I mean, maybe not a lot worse, but it would have just, it's a lot better to be wearing, Rose Bowl champ sweatshirts than just being like, okay, we're not going to talk about, Joe Burrow scoring 70 on Oregon, that kind of stuff, right? So with that hindsight, if you're put in the exact same situation again, where Oregon could be the 4 seed in the college football playoffs, facing whoever the number one team in all the land is, or gets to play in the Rose Bowl again. I mean, Izzy, do you want to see Oregon in that college football playoffs, even as an underdog?
I'm glad you asked that question because last year, most definitely, everyone was happy that Oregon got to the Rose Bowl because you're talking about that LSU team, that legendary. It's probably the greatest college football team ever, the LSU team last season. So I'm glad Oregon did not get to play them. It was just another win on LSU's record. But compared to this season, I'm looking at it. We'll probably play Clemson if Oregon does make it to the college football playoffs. And Clemson, they don't really play that tough competition. I mean, their
Sure.
toughest game this year was Miami, who's ranked 7th, and they're not a 7th ranked team in the country. The only reason they're ranked 7th is because Big Ten hadn't started their games yet, Pac-12 hadn't started their games yet, and to be honest, I think the committee's just trying to make it seem like Clemson got a good win. They're like, oh look, they beat a top 10 ranked team during the regular season, and really Miami is probably gonna finish ranked 15th at best, to probably like 20th. So yeah, that sounds ranked when it's really gonna be overblown, I feel like. So I would like Oregon's chances against a Clemson team in the college football playoffs because you honestly you never know. Like Trevor Lawrence, yes, we know kind of talent he is, but I would like to see what Chris Ball, Moorhead, and her defensive coordinator will have in their bag against that Clemson team.
Yeah, that's that's really every year we come to this Clemson situation where they are in the college football playoff. They look exceptional, but they do that against a lot of bad teams. And everyone says, okay, Clemson's really good, but who have they beaten? And then the college football playoff comes around, and everyone, even in the games they lose, everyone's like, okay, Clemson's insane. Like, this has been year after year after year. Clemson is insanely good. Okay. They're just, right now, a Clemson Oregon matchup. I personally think that's really fun. I want to see it. It's fun. I'm really excited to see Oregon go against the best. And obviously, Mario Cristobal, all the players, they want to face the best that's out there. But Clemson's still going to be a huge favorite in that matchup. And I think they're going to be a big favorite. And it has the potential to not be that good of a football game as well. Um, so I'm wrestling with this question personally. Like, I'm not sure if I want Oregon to go to that next level and to just lose by, 17 points to a Clemson and just say, all right, cool, great season again. Or whether I want Oregon to be, you know, fighting a really good Rose Bowl battle against the second best team in the Big Ten, most likely, um, and just getting to be in that Rose Bowl environment again. Because Oregon, it took a while, before they got back to the Rose Bowl last year, and you really gotta appreciate the times that Oregon can get back. And the crazy thing is too that like even the Rose Bowl, like being in the Rose Bowl, being the Pac-12 champ, I think would be an incredibly successful year for Oregon. The expectations are high because of last year, but people forget how easy it is for Oregon to go 6-0, then lose the Pac-12 championship game by like a field goal or something. And what are they playing in? The Holiday Bowl? I mean, they're not even in the Rose Bowl. They're not even on that level. They're playing in some, other outside bowl. They're not on the New Year's Six games, and that's it. Like they're 6-1, and they get to play some average, some top 25 team in a nice bowl game. But it's kind of a meh season. It's not super memorable. That's very possible, right? And so people gotta recalibrate, and I think Oregon fans got to remember that you have to be happy with as far as the season goes, whether that is college football playoffs, whether that is the Rose Bowl. Personally, I'm leaning towards wanting Oregon in the Rose Bowl over facing Clemson a little bit, but I would be happy to watch both football games. Like both football games, I'd be pretty pumped about just to see.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, but in my view, Oregon, ever since Cristobal has taken over as the head coach, they've been getting better and better records, better bowl games, and now, like, I feel like winning the Pac-12 championship and Rose Bowl again, even though it's great, like every fan should love that, it's gonna feel like kind of a stagnant type of year where you didn't really go up or down, you just stayed the same and nothing really happened. But I mean, you can't beggars can't be choosers, and that's where the Pac-12 is at right
Before
now.
before we go to the next topic, I do want to point out, Izzy, that this is a really fun sort of not philosophical, but it is a really interesting divide in how we both look at this year for Oregon that keeps coming up over and over again in our shows. And that I do see this as a stagnant kind of year for Oregon. I look at what they have to replace, and I say Oregon is going to have a hard time being as good as they were last year, and are on this Mario Cristobal train of like, no, it's going to keep moving up. Like at the very least, they're going to be as good as last year, with the potential to hit another level on top of that. And that's this really fun sort of divide that we have that I'm excited to see play out.
Yeah, and so move on to our next topic. Let's talk about our last what if scenario. What if Oregon secondary isn't able to stop the pass game, Michael?
Yeah, big question. As you can see that subline under there, Diamador Lenore is the only senior, the only returning starter there. They're going to have him. They're going to hope that he plays well and boosts his draft stock. Otherwise, it gets even worse. But we assume he's going to do well. And you're going to have a lot of other players. Andy Avalos at the defensive coordinator position has his hands full with who to even play out there and who gets a chance. This takes me back to what I saw from Oregon's defense last year was a lot of moments, a lot of periods of the game where they were really not performing at all, really struggling. I mean, I think of Washington State dropping 37. I think of Oregon State having some drives where they just rolled right through. I think of Washington, where for an entire half, it was only half the game, but for half the game, Washington was crushing. I think a lot of these circumstances where of course, Arizona State, you got to throw that in there too. In all of those situations, what's letting Oregon's defense down was the secondary. It felt like the secondary was a step behind and really having a tough game. And then on the other side, when Oregon's defense performed like a top defense in the Pac-12, which they were, Oregon's secondary was making big plays. I mean, they got a lot of interceptions. They got a lot of great coverages, a lot of shutdowns, and they were really strong. They were really picking it up and really impressed. And so it's a lot of the same. I expect a lot of the same for next year. That's the reason I dove into it in such details, because personally, I think we're going to see some big plays, some great moments, and some periods in games where Oregon fans are sitting on their couches just going, "Oh my gosh, we can't stop them."
Yeah, talking about this question, I'm not saying at all that our secondary is going to be bad because I've been raving about all the underclassmen
Yeah.
and Lanier, that the talent that we have is tremendous. That's why Cristobal, these are all guys that Cristobal has brought in since being the head coach. And I'm excited to see what they do. But again, like this is a what if scenario. So let's say that they're not able to stop the pass game, they're not able to play at the
Mhm.
level that I expect them to play. It's gonna be a tough season for Oregon because then you're gonna get into these shootouts to where I don't know if Brown and Shuck can get into shootouts with these Pac-12 teams. But then again, our run game is gonna solve all of that because you know how our run game is. But again, shootouts are different than run game because run game you waste more time on the clock, and if you're running it the whole game, you're not gonna have that much time to score more touchdowns compared if you're passing it the whole game, you're gonna have more time to get bigger plays, more touchdowns. So if this Oregon team is not able to stop the pass game, look for a very shaky season. But I don't
Yeah.
expect that to be the case at all because these guys they're ready. They've been under Graham, Holland, Brady Breeze, and Lanier. They've been learning from them, and Avalos has spoken about it last season too. That this secondary every year since Herbert's first year as quarterback, they've gotten better because of the guys before them. They're buying in like, okay, well, this might not be our season, but we still have to teach the guys that are coming in for us next season what to do and how to be better so
Yeah.
that their team can be better. And that's happened every single year. Now you're looking at these undergrads and it's all on them now. The
Yeah.
Graham left, Holland left, Breeze left. Lanier is the only one who came back. So it's almost like on their shoulders. And like you said, they were the ones who were actually making the big plays last season. Bro McKinley, Mikal Wright, those were the guys who were getting those big play picks who were sealing the games for Oregon against those teams. So I'm excited of what the secondary does, but hopefully they'll step up to the plate.
Yeah. I feel really good as well about where Oregon's defensive backs are at. I like the underclassmen. Expect I expect really good performances for the most part. I also expect to see what we saw last year, which is a few lapses. There's going to be one, two, maybe even 3 points of the season where the defense had the secondary specifically as a big letdown. And then you'll see what happens is the pressure is going to get shifted onto the linebackers in the front four. There's going to be pressure on them to do an excellent job, a phenomenal job, not to totally shut things down, but just to keep slow things down, to keep things level. Because with a bad secondary, that front line can only do so much for you. They can just sort of cause enough chaos that it's not a shootout, it's not a blowout. But you look at last season, Arizona State and Washington State were the two times where I think Oregon's defense did not perform well across the whole game. Where they really did not impress on the defensive side of the ball. And in the Arizona State game, Justin Herbert and the offense made a push to try and do something in the second half, but it fell short because the defense just continued to get run down. And in the Washington State game, the defense failed, and it left Justin Herbert the ball, having to make a game-winning drive, and Justin Herbert and the kicker bailed him out and got Oregon a win where they should have lost that game, whatever it was, but they ended up winning 37-35. So they should have lost 35-34. And so that at the end of the day is where I'm really questioning Oregon is there's going to be moments where Tyler Shuck or Anthony Brown is going to have to bail out the defense, is going to have to do the defense some favors. And that's going to be a lot harder than it was last year. Whereas the defense is the one that needs to be holding things together while the offense figures it out.
And we will leave you guys with that right there. Make sure to check out our columns at sportspac12.com where you can find columns from the Dash Sports shows and look for my Ducks column too coming out this weekend, every weekend. And thank you for joining us today. Make sure to follow us at Dash Sports TV and TikTok, Facebook. And check out our website too at dashboards.tv and make sure to catch our weekly shows Fridays at
Yeah,
5
I'm going to go
p.m.
follow the TikTok right now. See you guys.